Hey everybody, it's Rob here at etrailer.com, and today we're going to be taking a look at the EcoHitch Class 3 Custom Fit Trailer Hitch Receiver on our 2019 Toyota Highlander. Now I know everybody wants to see what it looks like and go over some of the features, so we're going to go ahead and do that first. But if you stick around to the end of the video, we are going to show you how to get it installed so you have the confidence to do it at home. But here's what our hitch is going to look like once we do have it installed. I really like the look of this because the cross tube is completely hidden behind the bumper, so we don't have a big bar hanging down. The only thing that's going to really be exposed is our receiver tube sticking right out the back here in the center. And the nice thing is it's almost completely flush, maybe just a hair to the inside of the bumper, so it not only does it have a clean look, but we're not going to have to worry about hitting our leg when we're walking behind our Highlander, or have it so far recessed back that it's going to be a pain to use. But it is a Class 3 hitch, so it is going to give us that 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube opening, and really have a really wide variety of options when it comes to accessories. Obviously you can tow a trailer, throw a ball mount in there, hook up, but you can also hit the trails with some friends, take some bikes with you, put a bike rack in there, or if you're going on a road trip, put a cargo carrier in there and move some of that gear to the outside. But regardless of how you're going to be using your hitch, all of your accessories are going to mount to the hitch pin hole here on the side. And the hitch is going to accept a standard 5/8 pin and clip. Now these are not going to come with the hitch, but you can find them here at etrailer.com, along with some locking devices to make sure your accessories are secure, and anti-rattle devices to cut down on that annoying rattling sound coming from the back of the receiver tube. Now if you are just planning on doing some towing, maybe you're going down to the lake, pulling a boat, going to the hardware store, you got a utility trailer, whatever you're going to be doing, you got to hook up your safety chains from your trailer. And here we have a plate style. I like these because they actually are on the side of our receiver tube, so we're not going to lose any ground clearance from being on the bottom, and they're really easily accessible. You got what I consider most normal size hooks. There's plenty of room to get them hooked on, take them off. And again, we don't have to worry about interfering with the pin and clip or even potentially hitting the bottom of our Highlander. And even if you have really large oversized hooks, there's still plenty of room to get them hooked on, make sure that clasp locks in place, and pretty easy to take them off. Now the weight capacity is going to be pretty important for a hitch because you got to make sure that it's up to the task that you put it to. Our hitch is going to have a 750-pound tongue weight. That's the maximum downward pressure at the end of the receiver tube. Now to put that in perspective of exactly how much that is, we're going to be able to carry quite a few bikes on a bike rack, maybe even 4, 5, 6 bikes with us. And at the same time, most of those really large cargo carriers, they usually max out about 500 pounds of capacity that they have, so we're really going to be able to get the maximum weight capacity out of that as well. Now our hitch is going to have a 5,000 pound gross trailer weight rating. That's how much it can pull, but that does include the trailer and everything we have loaded on it. Now I do want to recommend that you double check your Highlander's owner's manual, because anytime you use your hitch with any kind of accessory, you need to make sure that each component is rated for it, and you always want to go with the lowest rating. So you definitely want to double check your Highlander's owner's manual for the rating and not exceed what the manufacturer recommends. I'd like to give you a few measurements, and these are going to help you whenever you're looking for accessories for your new hitch. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the outermost edge of the bumper, it's going to be right about 3 inches. Now that measurement is going to help you when you're looking at folding accessories to make sure you have enough room to put them in the upright stored position and not make contact with the rear bumper. From the ground to the inside top edge of the receiver tube opening, it's right about 18.5 inches. Now that measurement is going to help you out when you're looking for a ball mount, so you can find the appropriate rise or drop to match up to your trailer. But now that we've seen what our hitch looks like and gone over some of the features, let's go through the installation process together. To begin our installation, the first thing we want to do is lower down our spare tire so we have plenty of room to work underneath. Then we're going to move underneath the back of our Highlander. We're going to move over to the passenger side, right by the exhaust. And if we look up, right by the tailpipe, we're going to have this plastic deflector. We actually need to trim this off because it's occupying the space that our hitch is going to. And you don't need to come all the way to the edge, but you want to trim it off so that it's only going to be right by the bumper here. Now you can use a utility knife, just plastic, so you just make a couple passes going harder and harder, air saw, rotary tool, just about whatever you have, but you want to cut that tab off so it's almost flush with the back of the bumper here. Our next step is going to be removing these panels on the underside. Now we are going to have one on the driver's side as well as the passenger side, and they're both going to be held in by a combination of plastic push pin fasteners as well as bolts. Now the push pins, if we come to those first, you're going to have a little notch in there. We're going to pry out that center section first, and then I'll take the tension off, then we can come underneath and pry out the rest of the push pin. We're going to go around taking all the push pins out, and then we'll come back and we can loosen up the bolts. And to pull all the bolts out, I'm going to be using a 10mm socket. Now on the driver's side, on the inside, up towards the bottom of the trunk pan, we are going to have two plastic retaining nuts. Now these are not going to come completely off the panel, and they are a different size. So typically what I do is I'll grab a 12mm socket, and as I'm loosening that nut, I'm going to pull down on the panel, and then I'll kind of help it come down past that stud. But again, that nut probably is not going to come off, but we don't need it to, so we're just going to loosen it up as we're pulling down. Then we can pull the whole panel out once we have all the fasteners removed. And we'll repeat the process over on the passenger side. Now the panel's out of the way, that's going to expose the frame rail on each side. Now if we come over to the driver's side and we look at the bottom of the frame, we're going to have a few plugs that we're going to have to remove. We're going to remove the very back two that are closest to the bumper, and we want to remove the two that are on the side of the frame. And typically you can just get a flat blade screwdriver, kind of start to unscrew it. That'll give you a little bit of a gap, and typically you can just go in there, pry out that plug. And again, we're going to do that for the remaining three over here and a total of 4 on the passenger side in the same location. And if we move towards the center from our frame rail, on each side we're going to have this fascia support, just a small tab that's attached to the bottom of the fascia, and then a push pin holding against the body. We need to pull these tabs out, so it's going to work just like all the other push pins. So we'll make sure we pop out that center section first, and pull the rest of it out. And that's just so that we have a little bit of room and we can bend this flap either that way out of the way so we can get our hitch in place. So you want to make sure you pull the other one out off the other side. Next thing we're going to do is lower the exhaust. Now you don't want to let it just hang down, you want to make sure that it is supported. So I'm going to put a strap up, just find a secure spot on the frame or somewhere on the vehicle. And then we can tighten up the strap so there's just a little bit of tension on the bottom. Then we can move to the muffler, and if we look at the inside frame rail, our hanger is actually bolted on. That's one of the easiest ways to disconnect it. So we just grab a socket, 12mm socket, we can pull both of those out, and that'll allow the exhaust to come out of the way. We can just swing the hanger out of the way. It gives us a little bit of room so we can flex the exhaust down but not have to worry about it causing any damage. So I'd like to go over the mounting locations for when we first raise our hitch into position. We're going to be using the bottom holes in our frame to hold it temporarily in place. We want to grab one of the new bolts out of our kit. We're going to follow it up with a split lock washer. And then we actually want to put 2 flat washers onto the bolt. We're going to go through the hitch and secure it into the bottom of the frame. Now all 4 locations on the bottom are going to get the same combination of hardware. Now it is a good idea to get an extra hands, but we're going to lift our hitch up. Kind of want to move those fascia supports out of the way. Make sure your hitch goes over the exhaust at the end there. And then we're going to take our bolt and hardware. And you want to get at least 1 bolt in on each side of the hitch so it'll hold itself up. And then we can work on putting the rest of it in place. I do want to mention something. In your instructions, they do tell you actually to cut these tabs off. But as you can see, We got our hitch in place. It's not fully in the position it needs to be just yet, but I don't really want to cut anything that I don't have to. And the hitch is going to be sitting against the bottom of the frame like this. So we still have a little structure for our fascia because that tab's there and it is held in place, but we may be able to get that push pin in there. But if not, I just personally would rather not cut, so I'd rather just have it pushing against it on each side rather than cut that tab off and lose the structural integrity from our fascia. I'm going to come back with a 19mm or a 3/4 inch socket and snug up all the hardware at the bottom of the frame. Now we want to come to the side of the frame and the side of our hitch here. Each side is going to have a side plate that we're going to have to put in place. Now you're going to notice that there's a slight curve. We want that little taper and curve to be pointing away or towards the outside. So we'll lift up and the oval holes, we'll line those up with the holes in the frame, and you'll notice that the smaller holes are going to line up with the holes in the hitch. We're going to take another one of our bolts, except this time it's just going to have a lock washer and one flat washer. And we want to loosely get one bolt in place, just going into the side of the frame so it'll hold the plate and it won't fall down. We're going to have one of these plates on each side. You just want to make sure you grab the correct plate. They are shaped differently, but the holes will line up if you have the right one. So we'll go ahead and put our hardware in over here and get the other plate in place. Once you have both plates in place, we're going to grab the new 1/2 inch coarse thread bolts, pass it up, follow it up with a flat washer. We're going to come from the outside. We'll go all the way through the hitch, through the side plate till it comes on the inside of the frame rail here. We'll take another flat washer. I'm going to take a split lock washer, and then finally we're going to secure it down with a hex nut. Now that's going to be the same combination for each one of these holes, so we'll put the other one in and move to the other side and do it over there as well. Once you have all your hardware in place, you want to come back with that same 19mm or 3/4 inch socket. And for the ones that have nuts on the back side, we are going to have to hold it with a wrench as well. We're going to tighten up all the remaining hardware that we have. You want to make sure you come back with a torque wrench, and we're going to torque all of our hardware down to the specified amount in the instructions. We're going to make sure we go back and repeat that for all of our remaining hardware. We can go ahead and take our hardware, lift up the exhaust slightly, and we can re-secure it back into its proper position. Just tighten down that hardware using that same socket. Now, in order to get our appearance panels on the bottom back in place, we are going to have to trim them because our hitch is taking up some space. So I went ahead and marked out the area. This is the driver's side panel. And basically, if you come to that hole that's in the bottom, there's a little tapered section. You just want to come straight over and then come right to the mounting point and just cut this section off. And again, you can use just about whatever you have. I'm going to use a rotary tool just so I can make a quick, clean cut. Now, I always suggest trimming it and kind of dry fitting it, because if we need to cut any more, I always like to cut as little as possible. So I'm going to dry fit it, and if I need to, I can always just shave off a little bit by bit so we get that nice fit. Our driver's panel fits pretty well. The only spot that you may need to trim a little bit more off of is right by this side plate where the opening is. You may not have to trim it actually if you just put it to the outside, because you can see it doesn't really want to line up. But right there is about the only spot that might give you trouble. But it's loosely in place, so we can start putting the fasteners back in, and we are going to have to trim the passenger side panel as well. For the passenger side panel, if we look on the inside edge, kind of where that wall is, we want to come to that first little curve, And basically right at the bottom, we're just going to come forward and cut that front edge off right here. Then if we come back, there's a kind of a taper right here. I'm going to cut about a 4-inch section out right here in the middle, and this is a little bit of a relief cut. Again, I'm just going to use the rotary tool, cut this section out, dry fit it, and make sure I don't have to do any additional trimming. Once you have all the panels back in place, you can remove the support strap from earlier and put your spare tire back, and that'll finish up your installation and your look at the EcoHitch Class 3 Custom Fit Trailer Hitch Receiver on our 2019 Toyota Highlander.